Today, we are joined by special guest Jakob Sanderson at a perfect time in the NFL calendar. After nearly a month with nothing to talk about, we have DeAndre Hopkins on the move to the Titans. We'll break down the fantasy impact and much more today on ADP Chasing. Let's go.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight. Jamar. Alpha play chase. Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally at this point. You're right.
What's up, everybody? Jacob, welcome to the show. We were just talking about it before we started, but perfect timing to have you on with Hopkins on the move. But yeah, thanks for joining us. How was your weekend?
Yeah, thanks, DeAndre. Appreciate that. If Dalvin wanted to slide in the next 5 to 10 minutes, that would be even better. But yeah, it's been a good weekend. It's been fun. We've been drafting a lot. The march to 150 continues.
Only 150, brother. Are you not maxing DraftKings too?
Yeah, that's for late August. That's my.
You're not going to get it done in late August. There's a lot over there. You gotta trust me. As someone who's trying to get DraftKings actions down, you gotta sprinkle it in.
Let me tell you.
My problem is I write the bar exam in 11 days, so that's limiting my drafting time a little bit, and then I'm gonna draft a shitload for about 8 days, and then I go to Ireland. So that's when I have to do the Davis Maddock load up 60 slow drafts before going to Europe special, and then we'll come back and mash whatever we can in August.
I don't know if I would do DraftKings slows in Ireland. You want to enjoy your time abroad. The 8-hour clock at all times is rough.
I used to make fun of Pete for doing the slows, but the only way I would have gotten all the teams I wanted to get drafted in this year with my sanity was to embrace the slow draft. So what I'm doing right now is I just enter one DraftKings slow every day. And that's going to get me to like a pretty healthy number where I'm not, it's August 3rd, and I'm looking at DraftKings and I'm like, I've drafted 20 teams. I have to get 130 teams drafted. So the slow drafts, they are your friend more than not.
I did max enter the slow draft Poodle 3. So I've been warming up to the slow draft idea a little bit, but I still hate them. And I'm still at the fun stage where it's like, I haven't left the wide receiver window in those drafts. So I'm still like making material choices. Like all of them are in like round 6 to 8. But once we get into round 15 and it's like,
so you're doing the star
or Ford? Like, yeah,
I've been starring the correlations.
I've been starring.
Yeah, it's the only way. I max the only way too slow, but I tell you what, even doing the star trick, like I haven't done the puppy slows yet. The puppy 3, it took a little out of me. I gotta say.
My problem is like I know like normal well-adjusted people can say like, okay, I'll check my slow drafts every like 6 or 7 hours. Like you don't have to check it every hour.
He schedules it out. He's got
I can't.
Email messages.
My brain does not work like that. Like if I'm on the clock in a bunch of drafts, like I'm gonna be checking things, like overthinking every pick for like way too long. It's just mentally.
I don't do that. I'm good.
I have the opposite issue. I have the opposite issue. I just occasionally will like I do try to space it out, but like even this round, like it was like I recorded a podcast really late. It was my Dynasty one with Drew, and then I was like I made a mental note to like check them before I go to bed, and I didn't, and I woke up to 2 autos, and they were like the stone worst autos. One of them was Najee Harris, which is always tough.
You love Najee Harris.
Why that was an auto for you? Was he? That's because he was in the queue for you.
He was. He is this, like, I mean, when you do the thing where you just like enter 50 at the same time, you just end up with the same room every single time. And I've ended up in a room of Najee haters. And like this entire Poodle 3 experience has been staring at Najee at like the 4 or 5 turn and just being tempted. I was tempted once. The 504, I think, was where I was like, come on.
I'd take him at the 504, yeah.
I just drafted 43 versions of the same team in the Pomeranian. Like I think someone who's in them with me went and looked and said that of the 14 rooms we're in together with, I drafted Geno Smith double stacks in 10 of them. So it's just
that Silva impression that's making the rounds like has actually made me feel better about how much I'm drafting the Seahawks because I'm like, hey, at least Silva's in.
Exactly.
Oh, wait.
Perfect.
No, it's not actually silver.
It is. The only nice thing about the slows for me is it's a good chance where if there's just certain players that I feel like I haven't been taking enough, where I can just make a mental note to be like, okay, like no matter what, I'm taking this player in 70% of these drafts. Like Dobbins has been a guy that I've like written about. I've had this big stand on him, and I looked at my exposure, and it's like kind of a weenie little 16%. I'm like, no, like that's not a stand. Like let's get this up. Let's get these numbers up. So I just made a note. It's like every time he's available past 5-6 in these slows, like I'm just clicking him every time, and I'm gonna have like 65%, and then we get out where we want to be. And I'm doing that with a few guys in this.
Yeah,
I just take Chuba Hubbard every time. Every
Yeah,
draft.
that I can do in fast drafts or slow drafts.
I've cooled on Chuba recently. I was hammering him early, so I still am probably about 20%.
Are we about to get a Liam, a chess Liam? Raheem Blackshear was a Buffalo Bills practice squad player, and we got to be afraid of him type beat.
I'm getting a new coaching staff. We don't know who they're into, and I liked that Hubbard was so clearly the number 2 in my mind, and now I'm like, is it actually an ambiguous? Is he kind of a
I think it is ambiguous, and I think Miles Sanders is the one who should.
Well, I'm not drafting Sanders.
Yeah,
I'm not drafting Sanders. I've never been drafting Sanders, and I certainly am not now.
I mean, who else would the 2 be?
Blackshear.
Well, Blackshear, but the issue is not that
he's not really a running back. Like he's kind of just like a hybrid-y.
The issue is that he ends up doing like a Hines thing, and then you're like,
he could be the complement to Sanders early down. I think is
that's
the idea.
Fine if Blackshear is the complement, like that's kind of bad for Chuba. But I mean, the biggest case for Chuba is like as long as he's still the guy, if Sanders goes out getting carries, then he's fine where he's going.
Yeah, that's true.
It
just makes him. There's like some other guys in that range where.
What if the Panthers are the Zeke team? What if they're?
I mean, that was the one thing that is interesting about them is like, I mean, they didn't take a single running back the draft, which stunned me. I guess like everybody else is taking that. I think everybody is right that they think Miles Sanders is a 3-down back. It's just that they're incorrect about that. Like I think that they do plan on making Miles Sanders a 3-down back. It's just that by week 5 they'll be like, But
also like 3-down back doesn't really. Like these teams don't mean what we want them to mean. Like when we hear stuff like that, we're like, "Oh my god, he's gonna have like 75% snap share. He's gonna be like." No,
it just means he'll be deployed that way, like situationally, but like maybe they'll rotate drives or something.
Yeah. So I don't know.
All right, now that we got the Raheem Blackshear talk out of the way, we should probably get to DeAndre Hopkins and Alvin Kamara.
Let's talk to Hopkins first. Yeah, people in the chat are already making fun of us for doing a 4-hour show today. So let's get into
8 minutes in. That is concerning.
It's concerning that Hopkins' first mention was 8 minutes in.
I wanted to start just like laying out Hopkins a little bit before we get into the takes here. I have seen a lot of stuff in the timeline about how Hopkins is washed and old and bad and whatever, and want to slightly push back against that. So his stats last year in limited games was wide receiver 10 in PPR points per game. His per route efficiency was still solid, 2 yards per route run, 26% targets per route run, both sort of top 20, top 10 numbers there. And then the charting stuff also likes Hopkins. Reception perception had him as 3% success rate over expected. That's 68th percentile, 63 in ESPN open score, 64th percentile. So good, not great, but still, not massive signs of dropping off there. I do think the big concern, obviously, is the Titans' offensive environment. They were the last 3 years in terms of pass attempts, they were 30th, 26th, and 30th in the NFL in pass attempts per game. Now, that said, they still did have a pretty good offensive scoring season back in 2020. They were 4th in the NFL in scoring. So I think the play with Hopkins has to be, low pass attempts in Tennessee, but very efficient like they were back in 2020 and even to some extent in 2021. But that's just laying the groundwork. I'm not sure where I stand. Jacob, let's start with you. I saw you tweeted about how Hopkins dropped a ton in your rankings. I'm curious what you think of this ADP of 45 at wide receiver 25 overall right now in underdog.
So he did drop a little less in my rankings than I initially vibed once I actually went and reprojected the Titans, because I projected a lot more Tannehill games than I initially did, and everybody's efficiency came up. My main stance with Hopkins was I was willing to be a big Hopkins bull when I liked basically every possible landing spot except for the Titans, like his only other spots. Like I was really, really optimistic about the Patriots landing spot. I thought that was like a stealthily awesome spot for him where he could just come in and dominate volume with a pocket passing quarterback, potentially be league average pass volume. Here, it's just such a tough spot where I don't really see that ceiling projection. Like I came in and I have him at 13.73 PPR points per game. I'm in the Titans with a 26% target share. I think my issue now is previously I was like, he has all of these sort of fragility concerns and floor risks, but I also think he's one of the only guys at wide receiver at his range that kind of, you can make a pretty easy case for this guy could be a mid-level wide receiver one, just based off he had a 30% target share last year. Now it's kind of flipped where it's like, I think his ceiling is probably closer to the fringy wide receiver one range where he's probably not that big league winner. And now I'm just more concerned about the floor where it's like, now he's a much higher risk to me of like a totally dead roster spot than some of these other guys with his age risk, changing teams, hasn't played double-digit games in a couple of years, where I don't think I've shifted the median as much as I've shifted my ranking, but I'm just a lot less interested in taking on that fragility when I don't see him as a really high ceiling play. So to me, kind of fits in with like the Godwin, Deontay, Hollywood, Pittman group of like guys who project for high target shares in pretty adverse conditions.
Yeah, and I would add that I do think last year's numbers may paint a rosier picture than like if you just think about DeAndre Hopkins and then look at these numbers and say he's still DeAndre Hopkins, because there was sort of this transition period with him back in like his true prime. He was more of a deep threat, and he would have ADOTs of 14, 12, 13. He was challenging downfield. In three years ago in 2020, his ADOT dropped to 9. And he's still highly efficient there. He had 2.25 yards per out run. Then in 2021, he was used again more like a downfield player with an ADOT of 13.1. And that was the season that made us all concerned about him. His yards per out run dropped significantly to 1.76. He didn't really stand out from like the Christian Kirk, who was also kind of operating a bit downfield that year. That's Cliff Kingsbury stuff. But he last year went back to more of like an intermediate guy, 10.7 ADOT, and the efficiency came back up. So I think Hopkins can still do the target domination thing pretty well. But the thing that we should probably be skeptical of now, especially given his age, is that he's going to be able to be this like big downfield difference maker. And in that sense, the Titans really is a bad landing spot for him because volume is the thing we're worried about. And I agree with Jacob on the Patriots. Like, I think Juju would have been like screwed. I think, Hopkins would have just been the target earner and soaked up a ton of volume, had a huge target share. He may still have a really big target share here, but it's going to be as part of a smaller pie. So I brought him down. He's at 55 in my rankings, just behind Ayuk, ahead of the group that Jacob talked about with Godwin and Deontay and stuff. But I think, he's kind of like starting that tier off for me.
Yeah, I have him at 56, so next to you. I have Deontay ahead of him, but that's the only one.
I mean, the thing is he's just going to earn a shit ton of volume. Like, he is going to earn as much volume. Like, however good he still is at getting open and at running intermediate routes, he is going to, because he has, like, I know we all like Treylon Burks, theoretically, or like in theory, we all sort of like Treylon. I know Corain does, and he can breathe now. But Treylon Burks' job he is going to be running the deep routes.
He's
right?
the deep threat. He's the X.
The deep guy. Yeah. And there is no other intermediate target earner on this team. This is not a team that really throws to their running back. I mean, Chig, I guess. I think Chig is, if he gets there in 2023, it's likely to be on efficiency,
He's not getting there.
Volume.
He's not getting there because this is I think really bad for Chig, who is a guy that I don't think can operate. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but my stance on Chig is that he is 6'2".
No, Jacob, that's way too narrow.
And that he really will struggle to operate as an 11 personnel base tight end. I think without Hopkins, it was okay because it was like, why don't we run this kind of weird 12 personnel offense? We can do whatever. We can be multiple. We can just use Chig as like effectively our other wide receiver. But if Hopkins and Burks are playing every snap, like then your options are either you're using Chig as basically just a slot and you're taking Phillips or whoever off the field, or it's base 11 personnel and Chig's playing as the tight end. And I just don't know how often you do that. Like
so this is
for like 60% of the routes.
I think you're really looking at the trees and missing the forest, which is that sure, maybe Chig only gets 86 targets or whatever this year, but one really cannot understate the difference between swapping out Nick Westbrook-Akine for even a 32-year-old DeAndre Hopkins. Like the offense, however we were projecting the offense before, they have to project much better now. And not only that, Will Levis is not in the range of outcomes right now. Will Levis.
Well, he's in the range of outcomes.
He's in the range.
He's definitely in the range.
If Tannehill gets hurt,
no,
I
think they could still suck.
They could still suck.
No, you guys, the
Cardinals suck.
One, their division. One, because of their division, the same way the Titans sucked last year, but felt competitive all year long because of their division. The same thing is going to repeat itself this year. And Mike Vrabel his wet dream is to take a true talent level team of like 4 wins and win 8 games with them. That is like that provides him with a purpose. That is exactly what he has here. It's Tannehill unless he gets hurt. I mean, they would have to be. I mean, we just did this with Malik.
I agree with you, Tannehill, unless he gets hurt or if they suck. And I agree with you that like probably they're going to win between 7 and 9 games. But I don't think that's assured. And it also might not even matter. Like, what if the Jaguars win 13 games this year? Because I don't think the AFC South is sending 2 teams to the playoffs. Like, there are way too many good AFC teams.
The Jaguars are running away with this division. Where do you think the Titans' offensive line was in PFF's offensive line projections, which came out?
It's got to be close to 32
this summer.
I'm saying 31. Oh,
it's 32. They project to have the worst offensive line in the league, which, I mean, it could just get ugly. Derrick Henry could go, miss some games. Like he's 29, turning 30. Like it could just like not work. And then I do think we could see Levis. So I do think this is good for it's definitely a signal that they don't think it's time to turn this over to Levis and look ahead for the future. And Vrabel's like the last guy who would want to do that. So I agree with that, but it just could get away from them, I think, still. Like, this is not it's not like an overly talented roster, and Hopkins is still probably pretty good, but is not like a huge elite signing by any means at this point of his career. So, yeah, I would be a little nervous still. I mean, I know Tannehill's going to get drafted more as well, and I think that makes sense on some level, but, like, he still is at risk of not playing in the fantasy playoffs. Like, this team could be very bad.
Would you rather draft Ryan Tannehill or Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder?
I think Ritter's still my favorite of those guys.
I will take Ridder.
I take
Tannehill.
I think
Tannehill.
Tannehill's
like a priority guy for me now.
Tannehill's proven he can do it in a way that neither Howell
or
Ridder have. And I don't think like Heineke and Brissett are that much different of threats than Levis is, given the context of Mike's team.
No, Brissett is a much bigger threat than Will Levis.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying that I don't think Levis is more of a threat than those guys are.
Oh, okay. Well, then I agree.
That's what I.
Yeah, I guess the only pushback I'd have is like those 2 young guys. Like the nice thing with them is their window of getting benched, I feel like, is probably more in the middle of the season, where it's like if they're bad to start, they might get benched. But then if they're really bad, it's like you'd almost rather just let them.
Yeah, you must get back in there,
right? It's like almost like Davis Mills, where it's like Davis Mills like played and then he got benched, and they were like, "All right, well, sure, Davis."
That's how I am expecting to eat it on Howell, is that he actually comes back in for the fantasy playoffs and ruins me.
Right. It's like once they're eliminated, you're more incentivized to play the younger guy. Whereas Tannehill, like his risk is like right at the end of the season.
Right at the end.
He's like, it's like week 16 and they just got
Jalen Hurts
eliminated.
It's Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts. Like that's the concern with Tannehill because of the draft position. They took him early second round. It's a classic. Let's see what we have. We need more information before we go into the offseason after this dead season. Like, there is a strong incentive to play Will Levis. It just like they did with Willis last year, right? Like, let's see.
They didn't play.
We don't have
they
anything.
Didn't play, they didn't play him until Tannehill turned his ankle.
Yeah, fair.
And then
they had a mathematical chance to make the playoffs until the very last week of the season. Like they were playing,
and then they brought in Josh
games.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because
but they were basically playing a playoff game. Like that's if you're drafting Ryan Tannehill, I think you are betting on the Titans not being eliminated from playoff contention through week 17 because
I'm betting
the first game that they are eliminated from playoff contention, Ryan Tannehill is no longer in the lineup. That seems like a lot.
I just this is not how Vrabel wants to do things. I think.
I think they need to know though. They need to know what Levis is.
I know, but
you think they could be fine?
Vrabel doesn't think like a.
Tannehill?
I just don't think Vrabel thinks in this like theoretical ideal like general manager mind that we're assuming. Like,
yes,
I agree it's in the range that Levis can play,
he does not give a shit. All he wants to do is bite ankles, dude.
Vrabel wants to win games. He's not. I don't think he's.
Yeah, but if he's 5-10, guess who hasn't been playing well? Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm not saying it's guaranteed that the second they're eliminated, Tannehill.
We're just disagreeing on the degrees of probability. Like I think
I don't
Ryan
care
Tannehill's,
when. I don't care when he gets benched. I care if he is benched in week 15, 16, and
Yeah.
17. I don't care if it happened in week 12 or week 4. It doesn't matter to me.
I'm just saying, to be fair, like the guys he is going to be going near, like Purdy, Howell, and Ritter, I think have like similar chances of being benched out the stretch. So that's where I'm just like,
I just don't think it's similar. Howell, I think, is probably similar. But I don't think that Ritter is similar, and I don't think Purdy is at all similar. I think Purdy is like, unless his elbow is non-functional, I think he's really safe.
I mean, we have no evidence of Ritter like being a competent NFL quarterback.
That's the concern with Ritter, right?
Like
Ritter might just really suck.
Yeah, like
that's
it doesn't
my issue
even
with him.
Yeah, like that's the thing where, like, I guess this all comes down to what players you have, right? Obviously, if I have Pitts, I'm going to take Ritter over Tannehill, and if I have Burks, I'm going to take Tannehill over Ritter. So maybe it's kind of like a dumb conversation to compare them 1-to-1 because that's not really how you think about it when you're drafting. But like in a vacuum, I just think Tannehill's like proven ceiling is a lot better than Howell and Ritter. So if you're asking me like, do I prefer him to those guys? I think it's yes, but I agree with the benching risk. Like,
but proven ceiling in the Arthur Smith, AJ Brown era of his career, which is no longer there. Like in the post Arthur Smith, post AJ Brown era, it's been not very helpful for fantasy for Ryan Tannehill. And I think that's hard to separate. Like a lot of Ryan Tannehill's best success was, and people in the fantasy world don't like Arthur Smith because he runs too much. And I get that, but he's a really, really excellent offensive designer. And a lot of that was like creating a play action system, hitting AJ Brown in breaking routes. He's running down the field. Like maybe Burks has that level of dynamism. We didn't really see it last year. It's possible. Hopkins isn't that though. Like Hopkins is more like matriculating the ball down the field 12 yards at a time. Like I'm not sure. Offensive line is atrophied. I don't know that they're getting a play calling edge. Like I don't know. I'm just not sure that the ceiling is that different. Like I'd almost just rather bet on Ritter as like Smith's moldable ball of clay than Tannehill and whatever's left of this environment. Like I like Tannehill as a real life player. I think he's clearly like a better real life player than Ritter. I'm just not sure that this environment sets him up for fantasy success at all.
One way I'll say Tannehill would be my favorite is that if I have an elite quarterback and I'm just trying to get that second quarterback to help me advance, I do think Tannehill in most seasons is going to be like a better when on the field quarterback than Ritter. You could also make the case for Howell in this.
Howell, Mac Jones. I mean, honestly, if you had to,
the answer's probably Mac Jones still.
If I made you make this wager, fantasy points per game, you get your pick of Stroud or Bryce Young versus Ryan Tannehill. Half point PPR point. I guess half point PPR doesn't matter. PPR points, underdog scoring, who scores more fantasy points per game, Ryan Tannehill or Bryce Young? You're taking Tannehill.
I have Tannehill projected, almost 2 points higher.
Yeah. So for an 18th round pick, when you can get one, also, I mean, I can't believe it took us this long to get here. He has a dome game in week 17, which I know we're disagreeing about his likelihood of getting to week 17, but the fact that if he does play, it's in a dome That's another.
And he will have
another,
18 pass attempts versus the Houston Texans.
He might. I mean, sure. Tannehill has always been.
True.
Tannehill has always been touchdowns, right? It's all it's all been touchdown driven. So in a weird way, he's like a kind of like a spike week quarterback, where like a bunch, like there are gonna be a bunch of games where he throws like 18 times and does, well, probably more now.
Yeah.
Although I don't know.
I know, and it is going back to 2020, but I do just want to say, like, at the height of this Titans offense, they were really good. They were 4th in the NFL of scoring at 31 points per game, even when they were 30th in the NFL in pass attempts. So like that's what this offense is. If it's really good, it's just super efficient passing. Derrick Henry being super efficient running the ball. I get that this is 2 years ago. I'm not projecting it at that level now, but in an individual game against the Texans, like in weeks 15 and 17, I still think there's like weekly ceiling for Ryan Tannehill, just having a couple really efficient games in a way that I'd feel more comfortable betting on Tannehill having that big game than, Sam Howell versus the 49ers defense in week 17. Like
they also play a bunch of shitty defenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. The offensive line thing is such a bummer because it's like they clearly just want to do the thing that, they do again, but it's like Henry's really old now. Their offensive line stinks. Like they're just a worse version of that. And I just don't know if they can get a full season out of it.
I think
I don't know if they can either, but to me, the difference that changed is the intention. We have learned the intention.
Nice.
That's true. Very true.
What about Burks? Where did you throw him, Jacob?
This is where I
Burks
feel bad.
To me, I feel as though he should go like right around like Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman range.
Yes.
That's
right. I have him above that, but not. I have him at 76. So I have him more in the Gabe Davis, Quentin Johnston range.
So I have Burks at 84, and that's behind. Well, I have Bateman like ranked considerably ahead of the market. But I have Burks ranked at 84, which is like a little bit behind like Bateman, Tony, Elijah Moore, Cooks, Quentin Johnston, kind of at the end of that. Like I have him ahead of Zay Flowers, but kind of the second last wide receiver of the window for me. For what it's worth, my projection on him almost didn't change. Like I had him at like 11.12 PPR points per game, and he went down to like 11.02 because
my
I blocked his target share by 2.5 points, but then I increased the Tannehill games, I increased the like efficiency across the board. So his projection almost didn't change this at all. It's just like no longer is the 27% target share breakout really in the range.
His range got tighter because you don't have to worry. I don't think the odds of, and I do care, right? I said I don't care earlier when Tannehill's benched. That's more for Tannehill himself. I do really care when he's benched or if he's benched for Burks. And the odds that we now get half a season or more of Will Levis are much lower. But also, he's not going to have a 30% target share either.
Yeah,
I'll end up with more Burks now because he's going to go. He might get to the wide receiver dead zone. He might get to a spot to where, like, if it's Burks versus Jamison Williams, taking Burks all day, every day. Like I would end up with a massive amount of him.
I think his floor is the more Bateman because I think they're similar in terms of guys where it's like we're not really sure what the role is. We're not even 100% sure what the talent is, but like they're young players that have given us some reason for optimism and some reason for pessimism. And to me, that's like kind of where Burks belongs now.
I could see that.
I think Moore is an interesting comparison, right? Because like I think there's even a little bit more role uncertainty with Moore because I think it's still in the range that DPJ is the starter in 2 wide receiver sets there in Cleveland. I wouldn't project that.
I think that's the most likely scenario.
You think that's most likely?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then, okay. Well, maybe that's a separate topic. I think if you think that's most likely, then wide receiver 44, 87 ADP seems pretty bad to get.
I don't have
a starter.
Well, my take on Elijah Moore is that if he's not good enough to displace DPJ from 2 wide receiver sets or force them to run 80% 3 wide receiver sets, then he's just not good enough to be an impact player. So if I'm taking him, I'm just betting on him being good enough to dictate their change in personnel usage. And then, and then when I don't click him, then I'm taking DPJ. Like I'm actually pretty in on both, but I think my main thing, I'm just projecting him to pass like a lot more than the market expectation. I'm just really overweight Browns.
That's the point I was setting up, is that like Moore has more role uncertainty, but I think at the same time, Moore has a ton more upside than Burks does now with the D-Hop signing, just in terms of volume, right? Like Cleveland could be top 5 in the NFL in pass attempts. That's completely impossible for Tennessee. Both of them, I think also Moore has a better chance to out-target Cooper than Burks has of out-targeting Hopkins at this point in their careers as well. So it's kind of an interesting one.
That feels right. Yeah.
It's an interesting, if that becomes the choice there, it's kind of interesting because I think Moore would have more upside but a lower floor. But yeah, Burks, I do agree that Burks's range of outcomes just kind of got tighter. Like the offense should be more competent, probably more chances for scoring touchdowns, but way less chances to, get a huge target share. So that sounds right. Like if he's in the mid 80s, that's probably where I would click him, like at market pace.
To me, Burks is almost even more like Bateman, where it was like a prospect we had a lot of good priors on that is like shown a little bit and fit some starts in the NFL, and then his team brought in other dudes and they also might not pass that much. Like that's kind of, he's like quite similar to Bateman. Elijah Moore to me is like Sky Moore, but with one good year of NFL production before the bad year. Like where it's like he might have the slot role, but like what is the role? Like how many routes? Like there's a lot more uncertainty, but we know the offensive environment might be really, really favorable.
And the one thing I would say, I agree with that. Bateman, you also have this foot injury that he's coming off of and this cortisone shot thing that I think the market's baking in a little bit. And I like to kind of get my discount to an extent there, rather than hammering him. Although I actually am still drafting a ton of Bateman, but I think Bateman would be more in the Quentin Johnston range if we just didn't have any concern about his health. So that's like, I completely agree with the Bateman comparison, but I think if we just didn't have the foot thing, Bateman would probably be like one spot above where I have Burks right now, or 2 spots ahead of where I have Burks right now. As it is, I actually have Burks ahead of him.
Yeah, that makes sense. To round out maybe the Hopkins talk, I think another thing that people are saying out of this news, and we've alluded to it, is that Derrick Henry becomes a much better click in the second round, because the same things we talked about, the intent of the Titans are going for it this year. They're not trying to rebuild.
Always was .meme.
Yeah, he has risen a little bit. I think he was in the third for a while, and now it's the back half of the second. Davis, as the Derrick Henry bull here, do you think he should even jump up further to like the mid-second, like near Taylor or Barkley?
I guess
what are your thoughts?
The thing is I've been having a harder time clicking him recently because I just am so bullish on Pollard. Like for example, at one point I was like 16-17% Derrick Henry. Is down to 12%, but Pollard is my most drafted running back, so it's hard. But yeah, the logic on a half-point PPR website that Derrick Henry gets to play the Houston Texans twice in the fantasy football playoffs, it is literally unassailable. You can try to assail it, but he will simply.
I will try to assail it. Can I try to assail it?
You can.
In the second of those games, he will be 5 days away from his 30th birthday, and he's running behind what is projected to be the worst offensive line.
You don't even believe it. You don't even believe what you're saying.
What's your exposure to Derrick Henry, Pat?
I definitely have some. Let me pull it up.
Are you over or under 8%?
I'm way lower. Yeah, I'm at 4.6%. 4.6%. Okay,
I am at I believe 12%.
Yeah,
it's a good number.
One randomly cut out of context video clip that made it out of its way, saying that I didn't like Derrick Henry. That is in fact Russian misinformation and not true.
I'm at 12.8%. So I'm similar to you guys.
I'm taking running backs in that range, but I like Pollard.
You just got to take Pollard over him.
Well, Pollard's the most drafted running back. I'm 26% Tony Pollard.
Oh, wow. I'm only at 12. I take a ton of Taylor as well, which is obviously before that range. But like,
see, I think ideologically, I am going to take Henry over Taylor because I have so much Anthony Richardson.
The audio listeners,
Anthony Richardson's positively correlated
Taylor with Taylor and Anthony Richardson because they're correlated season long, and you have the chance.
They are correlated season
back
long
and forth in the weeks. You get
leverage, my
Taylor
friend.
touchdowns 1 week, then you get your other quarterback in there, and then the next week you get low-owned Richardson, and he gets all the touchdowns. And season long, they're correlated. So you're
3 uncorrelated single week tournaments. Leverage.
I don't know, man.
I don't know how persuasive that is.
The show that I did with Bime for last week, we went on through this in detail about like the Jones Barkley and the Richardson Taylor and like all of the running back with the mobile quarterback with the two in the window. That's like I'm big on this. I want Richardson on every Taylor team, and I draft them both a lot and a lot together.
I draft them both a lot too.
So I do draft them both a lot. I guess it depends. Like, I think it's been due to Richardson falling. Like, I draft them both a lot when I get Richardson at like 110, 120 or whatever.
Every once in a while, you'll be in a room with like 11 dudes who started playing fantasy football in 1989 and like do not want I got Anthony Richardson on a Mahomes team in the 12th round.
Wow.
Last week.
Congratulations.
Like, it's just like, I didn't even need him.
How is
and he's got the back doors too. Yeah.
It was a puppy.
Anthony Richardson is now he's now my second most drafted quarterback, and I was originally out on him when he like debuted, but I guess the Colts fan in me got there. So he's
my
13%.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's move on from Hopkins. Couple guys here that are interesting at the top of the risers list. This is the biggest risers of the last week. The three guys at the top all stood out because they all have either injury or suspension concerns with Kamara, Kyler Murray, and Joe Mixon. Let's start with Kamara. I think this rise is based on news that he pleaded to a lesser misdemeanor than was originally going to be charged with in some kind of settlement. So people are interpreting that as good news for him, I guess.
Drew Davenport, good news for him, right?
It is good. It is
good news, but pushing back on the fact that it precludes or it makes an suspension impossible. I don't think that's true. The NFL
likely to get suspended.
That's definitely not true.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying is like my base assumption for Kamara was like a 6-game suspension, and I think that's still my base assumption. I guess this takes out like the full season suspension outcomes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Is that ever a likely outcome? Like I guess to me this just tightens the range of outcomes. Like I always thought it was like 75% of his range of outcomes was somewhere between like 4 to 6 games with like a little bit of a chance of 0 to 2 and a little bit of a chance of full season. And now it seems like it's like 95% of his range of outcomes is 4 to 6 games with like, but like to me, this like reduced, basically to me, it took away any chance that he doesn't get suspended and it took away a chance that he's out for the full season. So it made it more predictable.
Yes.
But I don't even know if that made him like I guess it makes him a little better pick because we have like more certainty that he'll be available in the playoffs, but I don't think it changed it that much. Like, I don't know. I was taking a lot of Kamara. I was at 14%. Not even because I love Kamara, just more because I hate that range of the draft.
It's that range.
If he moves up into like he's already doing it, but like now that he's moving up into a new range of the draft, I probably have taken my Kamara for the year.
Yeah, I think I'll end up being because I wasn't really taking him. Because I'm like, I don't even know how much he has left. He's flashed like some real. 2 years ago, he flashed like some really gross stuff in the rushing efficiency. He was a little bit better last year. They added Kendre Miller. They added Jamal Williams. I don't think that Jamal Williams is very good, but it just could be like, this could not be like a backfield that we're excited to have. And then Kamara might not really have much left in the tank. And, very likely you're not getting, I was just like, why am I taking this guy who might get suspended for the full season? And it definitely is going to get suspended for probably 4 to 6 games. And I'm not even sure he's good anymore. And I don't love this offense. So I just hadn't really been taking him, but it makes sense for him to move up. But I wonder if he actually goes back down once he is suspended. Because now I wonder if people are thinking maybe he won't get suspended. So I'm just going to wait at this point and see what the price is once we have all the information, because this doesn't feel great to me to take a guy who's probably going to get suspended 4 to 6 games. I would say more likely 4 than 6 at this point. But
let's just say, like, where would you take him if he was suspended 0? Like, let's work from there, right? Like, where do you think?
I like him. I like him more than all you guys because I like this. I don't even know if I like the offense, but they have the easiest schedule in the NFL based off last year's stuff. They have 11 dome. They have 11 dome games. I know it's very funny to joke about Andy Dalton and Derek Carr being the same person, but Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton. And the division is so, like we were talking about with the Tennessee Titans stuff, like the division is so bad that you have I would say sub 5% chance, sub 10% chance maybe of them, not, being competitive by the fantasy football playoffs. And I think probably Sam says this, and I think this is a point that actually people forget sometimes, but sometimes the easiest way to look at what a guy can do is look at what a guy has already done. And Alvin Kamara has had multiple stretches in his career where the touchdowns just won't come, and they won't come, and they won't come, and then they come all of a sudden. I mean, there were Alvin Kamara was not nearly the guy that we thought he would be last season based on where he was drafted. And he still had, one of his absolutely patented, explosion games. And I think the other thing is all these guys, Kendra Miller, Jamal Williams, Taysom Hill taking the goal line stuff. I don't really see the guy who's going to stop him from working in the passing game. Maybe you could just say
push
they were
back
throwing
on
it
that.
Yeah, I was going to. Well, they threw it to Mark Ingram, so why won't they just throw it to Jamal Williams or whatever?
It's not about who they throw it to. It's about what downs he plays on. In the Sean Payton offense, they clearly valued pass receiving over pass protection in long down and distance situations. And it made sense. They still had Larry Warford on the offensive line. They still had Teron Armstead on the offensive line. And their offense was based around throwing to running backs, Michael Thomas on slant routes, and seam routes to tight ends. It was very quick developing. Drew Brees always got rid of the ball quickly. Last year, Pete Carmichael's now calling the plays, and very different offense built around Olave running intermediate and deep routes, Shaheed running intermediate and deep routes. Offensive line is atrophied, and Alvin Kamara's pass blocking grade by PFF, which I think is actually a pretty imperfect measure of pass blocking skill, but it is something when it's backed up by usage, was second lowest among all running backs. He was at 20.2. And there were multiple games where he ran less routes than David Johnson. And he was getting subbed off in long down and distance situations. I think it makes sense in the context of an offense where they're trying to push the ball more downfield. Their offensive line isn't as good. And to me, it wouldn't be totally surprising if Jamal Williams is playing on some 3rd and 8s and some 3rd and 10s, where they're just saying we just want pass protection instead of pass receiving in this spot. I think whenever they're scheming targets to the running backs, if the running back's a primary or secondary read, Kamara is going to be the back for sure on early downs. And I'm sure he'll get some work in the 2-minute drill, but I don't know that he has that truly elite target earning upside if he's not the one that's running all of the routes. And we saw a bit of the sea change with that last year where he wasn't naturally the running back in every pass game situation. And it wasn't as though targets were going to other backs. It was just, they just weren't throwing to running backs in those situations.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to make the point that I looked into this from week 13 to 18 last year. Kamara had a 55% snap share, which that sounds low. That's actually not bad. My point isn't that that's bad. That was top 12 at the position during that range. The point I'm making
is because it is kind of bad. But that's amazing that it's down 12.
In the context
wonder why it was a good 0 RB year.
Yeah, exactly. In the context of last year's NFL, it wasn't bad. The reason it's bad is because his competition for touches then wasn't even Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was injured. It was David Johnson and Eno Benjamin, who had been cut by the Cardinals and signed from the Saints. Those were the guys who were playing significant
and divorced by the
snaps.
Texans within 6 days.
Yeah, so it's that's where I think the signal is clearly the end of last year. They wanted to scale back Kamara's workload. They invest pretty high draft capital and free agency money into the position. Jamal Williams got the 3rd highest contract of any running back. Kendra Miller was the 4th running back taken in the NFL draft, early 3rd round. To me, all the signals are just pointing in we do not want to use Kamara in that big of a role anymore. Or we don't think he's that good anymore. And yeah, that's where back to your question, Jacob, if you ask me where I would take him with 0 suspension, it wouldn't be that much higher than where he's going now. I know people disagree with me. I would take him near James Conner. You could talk me into the late 70s maybe, but it wouldn't be much higher than that. So I'm why?
But are you taking him over Javonte Williams? Because I'm not.
No.
Yeah. So Javonte Williams ADP is 90. I want Javonte Williams. To me, it's
he and Javonte Williams are sort of the same bet. Really, it's that they score a bunch of fantasy points in the playoffs after they come back from their respective things.
Well, kind of. The issue with Kamara too is that there's multiple obstacles, right? Like you compare it to like let's say his base role is kind of similar to Aaron Jones's base role, but Aaron Jones is one injury away from playing potentially 80% of the snaps, right? Whereas like realistically, one of like Kendre is a total stone zero as a rookie. Like Jamal's still there. Jamal sucks or gets hurt. Kendre's still there. Like he needs two guys to either get injured or like, I mean, Kendre could just fail, right? Like he could go full Keyshawn Vaughn. He's a round 3 rookie, but he needs.
No, I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna push back on that because Kamara has just been a fucking stud in timeshares before. To me, it's a question of can this be the last year that he has Kamara insane spike efficiency weeks, or can he not? And it sounds like you and Pat and Sam all believe the crazy efficiency games are just done. There's just no more of those.
I mean, he's lost a lot of juice.
I think he's lost a lot of juice. Yeah, could he spike in the right week? Of course he could. Like it's a chaotic game. If he gets enough, targets in any specific game, like he's certainly capable of doing that. But like his yards per route run definitely aren't what they used to be. I mean, he has 3 seasons of 2.0 yards per route run or better in his career. So 1.62 and 1.66 the last 2 years, which are good for like those are good numbers for running back. But I'm just like the rushing stuff hasn't been as impressive. So now the path really is through the receiving game. The pass blocking numbers that Jacob referenced are horrendous. His grades 2 years ago was 12.3 out of like 100, and last year was 20.2. I mean, these are like horrible pass blocking numbers for Kamara. So if it's more of an emphasis on getting the ball downfield and less dump offs on early downs, like maybe he's more like a Joe Mixon now in terms of his pass game involvement, where he's not always going to be out there in the obvious passing down situations. They'll certainly throw to him, but it's not like he's just kind of a harder time, I think, racking up targets.
Yeah. The other issue with Kamara, I mean, Pat mentioned like he used to be a truly elite runner, right? Like he used to be like a Tony Pollard-esque figure.
Yeah, he
was like he was getting like 5 yards per carry
anymore.
You didn't give a crap if you only had 55% of the touches because every time he touched the ball, it was must-see TV. Like it's now he's just like he's still a good receiving back, like not as much on the pass blocking side, but like he can run the routes and he gets targets on his routes. Like it's still like pretty good. Not what it used to be, but he's still good at it. Like he still had 77 targets last year, but he's no longer like a get your popcorn ready type of player for sure. Right. Like I now care about his opportunity share.
Yeah, but neither is frickin' James Conner. You know what I'm saying?
But James Conner's going to get like all the touches unless he's the issue with Conner is if he's like just a little bit worse than we think, then it's like he's screwed because he's not very good. But James Conner is actually a great pass protector.
And the team doesn't matter. And you want to talk about you want to talk about teams where they're literally looking at the team at week 8, like what is the point? And this is a good segue to Kyler Murray, who we're about to talk about, where they're like, let's let Jonathan Ward play, Keontae Ingram. Why? Sure. It's because
Juju's never heard of. We're gonna learn names in Arizona.
Yes.
If
Connor this guy, Amari DiMercato, the guy who used to sub Kendry Miller off the field on 3rd downs at TCU. He's showing out in camp right now for the Cardinals.
I guess my only pushback on that is like last year that was the case, and they gave Connor like even more touches when things didn't matter. Like like the Cardinals had 0 to play for down the stretch, and they just loaded up Connor with different coaching staff this year. I get it, but I don't know. I do think back to Kamara quickly, and then I want to get to some of these other players. Like the thing that scares me is if you were to tell me I have to bet on like 5 running backs in the NFL to have a 100-yard receiving game next year, like Kamara is still probably in the top 5 for me. Like I do see how he buries me with like he had that game against the Raiders last year, right? He caught like 2 touchdown passes, 100 yards receiving, like added 80 yards rushing. Like, yes, I think there's worlds where the Saints offense is better. Maybe one of the other 2 backup running backs gets injured and Kamara can do that. But I don't know. Like last year too, the Saints they were kind of like forced to use these guys they didn't really want to in the passing game because Michael Thomas got hurt. Like Rashid Shaheed, undrafted free agent, played a big role. Like this year with everyone healthy, in the pass catching core, even Olave missed a couple games last year. I'm just not sure the plan is going to be to feature Kamara in the passing game. Like they have a lot of other serviceable options.
I'm sure Michael Thomas will continue to be at perfect health for the full season.
Yeah. I'm projecting him to play all 17 games. There's no way that goes wrong. But I don't know. Like it just seems thin. Like it seems like so many things need to break right for Kamara, which is why I just see cleaner paths to upside with other picks in his range, like considering all the factors.
The issue too with Kamara that's so tough about taking him is like, I generally am, part of it is like I take a lot of Breece Hall as one of my early running backs, and I also will go like hero running back or zero running back sometimes still. I would like my running back in this part of the draft to like either be a really awesome upside swing or be like starting games. Like I kind of like want to, they're sort of fit in the two archetypes. And I guess the fact that I'm now concerned about how big of an upside swing Kamara even is like, compared to like a Zach Charbonnet or like a Javonte Williams, like I want those guys. Those are the ones who I can actually like envision being awesome down the stretch. Not that Kamara can't, but you're not getting that big of a discount on Kamara relative to those guys.
Well, the one change is Kamara, as his ADP shifts, he's now going on the other turn. So he's not going on the Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs turn of guys without early season workloads. He's now going on the Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs turn of I need my late season hammer. My early season is covered. So the use case is changing a little bit. Like I agree. If I have Breece Hall, I want James Conner on my team. It's like, all right, I'm going to get points early in the year.
Right.
And if he is declared doubtful with general soreness in week 16, that's fine. Like he helped get me there, and Breece Hall is going to carry the baton. But like if I have a team that starts Henry Jacobs, like then Kamara becomes a lot more appealing in this build, where it's like I don't really realistically my first 6 weeks are fine. I'm putting them in every week.
Yeah. Final point on Kamara, and then let's move to Murray. I think there's going to be a buying window later. That's how I'm playing it. I think he's going to get suspended. Even if you think this ADP bakes in the suspension, that's just not how the market works. They will double count these things all the time, especially in August. If Kamara gets a 6-game suspension, casual people come into the drafts. They're not going to like that O tag next to his name. I think he's going to fall. So that's how I'm going to play it. Let's move on to Murray. He's risen, which is interesting because I don't think there's any hard news about him. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but he has had some optimistic quotes about his recovery. So that's what I'm guessing is driving this. He is at now 150 overall. Davis, I'm curious how you're playing the Kyler situation. He's priced now near guys like Stafford, Derek Carr, Jordan Love. How do you think his price compares to those guys, and are you drafting them at all?
I mean, I totally get the theory behind Kyler Murray, right? It's very similar to the Deshaun Watson theory from last year, where okay, you get this stud quarterback back, this guy who's got all this ceiling, and if you can just get a team into the 3-week sprint with Kyler Murray, you're going to have this huge advantage. It's also a way to backdoor a correlation to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. If you miss on Jalen Hurts, you could take, and I mean, you can even backdoor Kyler too, because you can take McBride, you can take Ertz, you can take Keontae Ingram, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch. The issue is eating zeros at quarterback. Huh? For some people, not for
me. We weren't allowed to talk about him. Okay. Noted.
That's Sam's favorite player, right?
Yeah. The issue with Kyler is twofold, right? So it's you're eating zeros guaranteed. The other thing is you would anticipate the rushing production to be the last thing to return, probably coming back from an ACL tear. And what is Kyler Murray without rushing production? Certainly not someone as good. And I mean, this is going to be the worst team in the NFL. So even literally, let's say he comes back. Well, let's say he comes back. I still don't think you're guaranteed for him to play in week 17, honestly, because they might just be like, okay, your knee's good, whatever. Let's see what Clayton Tune's got, So I've taken him a little bit. I've got him 4%, right? So it's not like I'm never taking him, and I would obviously only take him in 3 quarterback build. Well, so my original thinking was actually maybe it's super galaxy brain to do a Mahomes, Allen, Hurts team, right? And then you just backdoor him once with Kyler, and you have alternate.
He shares the bye with is it Hurts He shares the bye with someone.
With one of
No,
them,
I don't
sure.
think it's
But
it's Lamar, I think. No,
Sure.
is it Allen? I don't know. When's his bye?
So, yeah, while you guys are looking up that, I do want to say one thing on Kyler, because I do think like this injury pessimism on him is like a little bit overblown. Just to compare him with another guy who tore his ACL. So Joe Burrow in 2021 tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL on November 22nd, completely blew out his knee. He came back week 1 the next year and finishes at the QB 10, 20 points per game. Kyler tore his ACL just 3 weeks later than that this year, and it was a clean tear, no damage to other ligaments. He's coming off QB9, QB4 season. So I'm not saying that, Kyler's coming to that same situation that Burrow was coming into. Obviously, Burrow had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, had a great offense to work with. Kyler's coming into a bit of a hellscape in Arizona, but I just think the injury pessimism is a little overblown. Kyler's younger than Joe Burrow, so it's not like there's this age thing at play here. He's basically the same age Burrow was when he tore his ACL. And yeah, again, it's a clean tear. I think this like pessimism isn't really coming from any like hard news. It's just like speculation of, the Cardinals suck and like they might not like Kyler or whatever. Like, I'm slightly bullish on him at his ADP just because I think there's a chance where we're going to get news in a couple weeks that's like Kyler's planning to play week 1 and like the Cardinals are trying to win. Like, I just don't think that's impossible like currently. So I want to take some stabs now because I think there's opportunity for him to rise quite a bit.
He is sharing a bye with one elite quarterback. They share a bye with only one other team, and that is the Washington Commanders. So he shares a bye with Sam Howell.
Yeah, I don't know. I looked that up. I don't know what I was thinking there. Why I had that in my head.
I also thought that was true. But anyway, I take him. The one I don't really take him with Hurts because Hurts has the week 7 bye. And I don't know if Kyler's playing in week 7. But Josh Allen and Jamar Jackson have week 13 byes. So I think
Hurts is
you're
10.
taking Kyler.
Isn't Hurts 10?
I thought it was 7. Anyway, I know Allen and Lamar are for sure week 13. And if you take him with them, like you're certainly getting Kyler. Well, maybe you're not getting Kyler in week 13, but if you're taking Kyler, you're certainly assuming he's playing by week 13. I'm optimistic on Kyler. I'm at 8%, so I guess with the market. And yeah, I take him either with an elite quarterback as my second, or I take him with 2 other kind of mid quarterbacks and a QB and a 3 quarterback build. One thing I'm fading is like the Arizona will just sit him out on purpose narrative. Like maybe if he's not ready to play by week 13 or something, like sure. But if he's ready to play in like week 5, I just really think betting against NFL teams doing like proactive tanking is more often than not going to be the correct bet. Like how many times do we see NFL teams like go full Sam Hinkie? Like it just doesn't seem very frequent to me. Especially like new coaches coming in, like does that coach want to start off his tenure with like a 2-15 season in like a totally non-functional team? Like I just feel like if I was coaching and I wanted to, like, we're talking about how they're going to be the worst team in the NFL with Kyler. Like, wouldn't you at least just like want to try and have some level of functionality and like have some level of morale? Like even in terms of the young guys, like I just don't think that you're, especially the way coaches think and the way they obsess over culture and motivation. Are you establishing a strong culture if you're intentionally trying to lose games?
Yeah,
you're extremely correct. It's the Vrabel Tannehill thing. That's just not really the way NFL coach. Even if they are 9,000 to 1 to win the Super, it's like the Texans winning that last game of the year, right? Just the super meaningless game at the end of the year. Like they don't care. They just want to win games. That's all that matters to them.
And I'll also note on the rushing, Deshaun Watson, 5.14 rush attempts per game in his rookie season when he tore his ACL. Comes back year 2, 6.19 rush attempts per game. So he actually increased by over 1 rushing attempt per game coming off the ACL. Earlier ACL tear, but certainly did not negatively impact his rushing next year.
Yeah. The one thing I'd also say on the motivation for the Cardinals, keep in mind they have Houston's first round pick. So there's a world where Houston's like 0-9, right? And they're like, fuck it. Like we have a good chance at the number 1 overall pick, even if we win a couple games, right? Because Houston's going to be so bad. So again, that's this thing where the motivations, like the Cardinals aren't like, simulating a Madden franchise at home on their Xbox. Like the coaches actually have to play for his job. They can't just tank games and lose for the draft pick. It's possible they could, but like we don't see that happen in the NFL like very often.
Yeah. the issue with the NFL is that, like, when you do that, the odds that you as the regime survive it are very low. I think that you're most likely to be able to survive it if you're both new. And that's what makes me a little bit nervous about Kyler this year, is that you got new general manager, new coach coming in together. And like, how into this Kyler Murray experience are they? Do they want that to be their life for the next 5 years, trying to squeak something out of this team with Kyler? Or do they view this as their opportunity to get a fresh start? Because they're only going to get one chance to kind of move on from Kyler, and it's this year. So I've probably been overly nervous about that, though, because I generally do agree that, like, and when it comes down to it, NFL teams and NFL coaches, like, they just do not want to tank.
Well, the other thing too is, like, one thing if they're literally 0-8 and it's like, we're going to get the number 1 overall pick, and and that it's Caleb Williams, or maybe they've already looked at it and said, we're already out on Kyler. We've already made that determination. Like, we've seen enough on film. The contract's too bad. He plays too much Call of Duty, whatever it is. Like, I don't know. But if they're undecided at all, wouldn't you want to play him? Like, find out, like, do we like this guy? Like, and then the other aspect is, if they have decided that they're out and they want to trade him in the offseason, you want to showcase him a little bit. Like, wouldn't his trade value be better if he's played some football games?
I don't even know if it would, to be honest. I think you might be better off just keeping him on ice and making sure he's healthy.
Depends how bad the offensive environment is, I guess. But I mean, even like, and again, I'm not a cap expert, so I could be missing something here, but to trade him next year would come with $81 million in dead cap for the Cardinals. Like, I don't even know how feasible that really is to do. I know teams have gotten out of really bad contracts before, but that's a hurdle in itself. I mean, just
a hurdle, but if they have the number 1 pick, it's a hurdle they will jump.
Maybe.
I mean, you just eat it.
I don't know. Like,
the Falcons basically did that 2 years ago.
I just don't know. Like, we're pretending it's just the Kyler, like, narrative is so strange, because last year in, like, dynasty startups, he was like the 6th overall pick in Superflex leagues, like top 8 pick. Like, everyone was projecting him to be, like, really good for a long time. He just came off his best passing year ever. And all of a sudden now it's like, he's a guy where the team is going to tank and trade and get rid of him, and he's, like, no good anymore. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I still think like, if I am walking into that job as a GM, I do get, if you have the number 1 overall pick, like, that changes things. But, like, he's still proven a lot in the NFL in ways that, a number 1 overall pick, you have to project a lot to get there. And I think a coach who's taking this job with a guy who has that much of a dead cap and that big of a contract isn't coming in there, like, with the plan to get out of it. It just would be kind of weird to accept that job if that's what your plan is.
I think it's just weird to accept that job. Full stop.
I mean, which is maybe why they got a weird coach.
It's only 32 jobs. It's only 32 jobs. Like, it's just when you get the opportunity to be a head coach, you just take it.
You just do it.
Yeah.
Explosion.
Yeah.
So Mixon.
Let's talk Mixon. Yeah.
I'm going to be taking a bit more Kyler going forward. You guys convinced me of that.
Great.
Mixon, I think he's good.
I like Mixon. So I thought Mixon was going to spike a lot, but I still have been getting him, like, in the 50s, like, even after the news he restructured his contract. So I don't know. I just think we're in this weird, like, wide receiver thirsty environment where even where Mixon, like, should be maybe a 3rd round pick, like, I just don't think he's going to jump those guys to get there. So I'm going to be, if he's in the 40s, like, I get he can still be suspended, but at least I see the payoff with Mixon in a way that I don't really see it with Kamara. There's no other running backs on that roster of note. He basically has been what he's always been, just kind of like an inefficient guy, but someone who can soak up a ton of volume. If you can get that around pick 50, like, I think I'll be at market, maybe even slightly above at that price. So curious what you guys think, Pat. Are you interested in Mixon with this news, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, at pick 50, I'm interested. He moved up to 47 in my rankings. I was considering moving him up, or I think I did move him up for like a day, a little bit higher than that. In part because I was like, oh God, like, is there going to be kind of this hype train around him? So I was like, what's the highest that I kind of feel comfortable? And it wasn't that much higher. I think I had him more like in the mid 40s. So just a few spots higher, but I don't think that's coming. And we're now sort of the next part of the discourse appears to be like, well, is he going to get suspended? Which strikes me as, you know, a real possibility. And that should help keep a little bit of a cap on how much hype there is. And I'm still not like, I don't want to be like super bullish on Mixon. I think he has some left in the tank, but he's a flawed player. Like he's always kind of been overvalued in my opinion. You know, he doesn't really play on third downs. He probably still won't play on third downs this year because it's sort of the pass blocking thing. They've always taken him out for that. And so, yeah, I think around pick 50 seems fine. My issue is structurally is that like I just need a wide receiver there a lot.
Right.
Like at the 4 or 5 turn, I almost always need a wide receiver. So
yeah,
and I don't know like if I'm gonna make the priority for Mixon there because ETN sometimes falls to the 4 or 5 turn, and I don't even take him because I need the wide receiver so bad. I'm like that's one of the reasons I sometimes struggle with the running back value at the 2-3 turn because I'm like. It's hit me enough times where I'm like I have to pass on Travis Etienne at a huge ADP discount because I sacrifice my flexibility at the 2-3 turn. I'm not keeping that flexibility for Mixon. You know, I might take like a extra Devonta Smith and hope for a sweet ETN value. But
I take him a lot. I take him a lot on Mahomes teams.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
even there. I mean, you still need the wide receiver, right? Like it's still a little.
Jacob, what are your thoughts?
I was going to make basically the same point that Pat just made, which is like I've been taking Mixon just mostly because I've been expecting a rise in ADP. I think people have been. I don't know. I don't like players like Mixon where it's a type of player I don't want to draft, but I think that the price doesn't make any sense. It like frustrates me when there's those spots because I would rather just always be 0% on Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
But like that price is just bad. Like he was a second round pick last year. He wasn't like a particularly good second round pick. He also wasn't like a particularly woeful second round pick. His role is basically the exact same
position on him, so it might just be kind of a prior thing.
I had a fade on him last year. Like I thought he was a very bad second round pick coming into the year. I'm just saying, like he didn't perform horribly. Like he was.
I would not be taking him in the second round, but I'm taking him in the 4th and 5th round.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you took Mixon last year in the second round, you like aren't victory lapping it, but like it didn't like gut your team or anything. It was like a fairly inoffensive pick. And then his situation probably improved. Right, like they got rid of Pirine, so it opened up some possibility that he now plays on third downs. I agree with you. I don't think that's the single most likely outcome, but it's more likely than it was prior to last year, I think. And then his price, like now it's a lot cheaper. And I get part of that is the environment, and part of that's just baking in age risk. But again, like he's basically Najee Harris, but on the Bengals. So it's like hard for me to value him that poorly when he's going like a full round behind Najee Harris. I don't think that Najee Harris is like necessarily, you know, the sun by which
I think he's better than Najee
judge
Harris.
All good value rotating, but it's just a point. I've been taking him a little. I'm only a little overweight, like 10%, just based on kind of what you said. Like I'm usually one wide receiver through 3 when I'm drafting at the 4 or 5 turn, which is where Mixon goes. Like I'm almost always taking a wide receiver in the 1st. I'm usually not taking a wide receiver in 2 or 3. Like if Devontae or Olave falls, great. Otherwise, it's usually running back, or running back quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, if I then take another non-wide receiver, I absolutely have to double tap wide receiver at the 6-7 turn, and I don't always want to feel like I have to double tap wide receiver at the 6-7 turn. So
there's good tight end values there.
Right. Like I want to take Waller. I want to take Pitts. I mean, I even like I'm mildly interested in Cam Akers. So it's I also really like Dobbins. So like on the cases where Mixon falls, I'm just like, I actually just like J.K. Dobbins more. So I don't really want to like just have to feel like I'm taking this falling Mixon. So I don't know. I've been mixing him in in this like a lot right now. I do still think he's going to rise. We've had this discussion before where it's like news comes out and then it doesn't really rise that much. And we're like, oh, I guess it's not going to rise that much, but it eventually does over time. It's just people are kind of leery of taking guys ahead of ADP. So I think it builds slowly. But I still think that if he doesn't get suspended by the time we're doing these in late August, I think he goes 3-4 turn. Like I think
when's his court date? Isn't it mid-August?
August 14th.
Yeah. That's why I'm leery of. I want some stabs in the 50s. I'm hesitant now to chase him up to like around 40, just because I think the suspension stuff is still. I don't know if I'd say likely, but definitely possible.
Still lurking though, for sure.
It's still lurking, and like, what is his absolute ceiling ADP?
Isn't it
if he
likely?
doesn't get
Isn't he
suspended?
going to get something? I mean, unless the charges
unlikely.
Well,
you do?
See what seems
wouldn't they
to
just adjourn it? Like, wouldn't they just keep getting adjournments? It's not hard to get adjournments.
No, I think there's something with the timeline of this case. This is where I'm saying like a point that I don't fully understand, but the legal experts that I've read, I think there's something to do with the timing of this case, where it's likely that something is going to happen in August, like not a postponement or something. But Jacob, you're a lawyer.
Really?
You definitely know.
Well, I'm not.
know
I mean,
more
I'm not
than
that
me.
familiar with the details of the Mixon case. Like and I'm also not an American lawyer.
He brandished a gun at a woman the night before the AFC Conference Championship game, and then went and drove to the team bus.
I'm familiar with the facts of the case. I'm just saying the procedure of the case. Because last year, Kamara had a trial date and then it got adjourned, and then he had another trial date and then it got adjourned. And if you're Joe Mixon, it's
adjourn that shit.
I'm just live like there's no tomorrow, man. You're play as many games as you can this year, because who knows if he's even going to be employed next year. So it's an unpaid suspension out of this year's contract is a much bigger risk than an unpaid suspension out of a future contract he may not have. So if you're Mixon's legal team, your objective is just adjourn. But if you can't do that, I don't know. I'm just not familiar with the procedural specificity of the case where there was some reason why you couldn't postpone. But oftentimes you can get things postponed if you try hard enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting one to monitor. I also would want to know, in this contract that Mixon got, how much of the guarantees could be voided if he gets suspended? Because I think it depends if it's a signing bonus versus game day, whatever bonuses or whatever. So that'd be interesting to see how it's structured. If the Bengals are setting themselves up to get some of the money back if he is suspended, that would send a bit of a signal as well. But at this point, I think we just don't know with Mixon. It's something
it is interesting
monitoring.
As we think through the suspension risk stuff, and I think Goodell's suspending him if plus you also have to, there's Mixon came into the league. He only fell to the second round probably because he had hit this woman in a McDonald's on video, or I don't know if it's McDonald's, but some fast food restaurant. And so with that history, I just think he's definitely going to get suspended as soon as this wraps up. But we don't know when it's going to wrap up. And it is kind of interesting that the Bengals did rework the deal and really don't have a backup option of note in place, when it would have been pretty easy for them to just be we couldn't come to an agreement. We're going to sign Zeke
or Fournette or Kareem Hunt or whoever.
Yeah, there's so many options for them to play this through, not Mixon. It does make me think that maybe they think the suspension risk is not all that high.
Yeah, the only slight pushback I have is cutting Mixon. They could have saved some money, but I think it still would have come with some dead cap to cut Mixon. Yeah. So the Bengals did have some incentive to find a middle ground, right? I totally get what you're saying though, and I think
they just
one
be
of these
really
other free
annoyed
agents,
with him. He did this right before their playoff game.
Yeah, I think these other free agents are still
maddening to me.
Yeah, these free agents should definitely still be considered in play for Cincinnati. I think, especially if they're Fournette. If Fournette left Tampa Bay because he wanted to play for a good team, right? That makes a lot of sense. As Fournette
is the agent for Leonard Fournette.
Well, no, but it's literally he also put out a hat of the teams he was willing to play for, and it was every single fucking team except the Buccaneers on that hat. So I think he was I want to play for a winner, meaning not this franchise without Tom Brady.
Yeah,
smart man.
I also think he may be reevaluating his market at this point in time. His market might not be as nice.
Well, all these dusty old guys being available all in one summer are really there's probably only two spots for Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, and Melvin Gordon, and they're all sort of competing for
Yeah.
Like the first camp injury or whatever.
Melvin Gordon's losing that competition.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon's the last on that call list.
I mean, that's what you guys think, but Latavius Murray just got like a $3 million deal from the Buffalo Bills.
That's crazy.
Man.
Well, the Broncos
People don't want to hear
Latavius Murray.
Million, but
the Broncos literally had their choice between Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon, and they chose Latavius Murray.
Latavius Murray was good last year. People don't want to admit it, but he was good last year.
I just remember seeing FFPC bids for Latavius Murray and being like, I can't believe that I don't just win the main event every single year with what people are bidding on Latavius Murray.
They were right. They were
kind of right, to be honest.
And they were right.
Let's move on to Sky Moore. He is up again. He's just kind of been the steady drip upwards all offseason. We're still looking into who's responsible for this. But I kind of had to come to Jesus.
I'm going to get arrested for insider trading on this. This was one of my calls on ADP chasing that he would go up.
Yeah.
Although I don't think we've hyped him a ton. It's mostly last year.
I had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment on Sky Moore where I'm so out on Tony, and we don't need to go back into that. But I feel pretty strongly in wanting to be out on Tony at his price. And you look how the math shakes out after that, and I think I do have to be in on Sky Moore at around 110. So I've been taking him more.
You sound excited about it.
I'm not. I really hate it when I do it, but you can squint. I hate to squint at players' rookie years to tell good stories, but there is a way to squint.
No, I can't. I'm literally not going to allow this. You cannot. The only way you can frame Sky Moore's rookie year as a positive is if you say Andy Reid very rarely turns the reins over to a rookie wide receiver. I can't. There's nothing else you can say.
The target per route run.
Look at the target per route run and the PFF grade and the reception perception, and then just say context. Never heard of her. And route samples, never heard of them either. and just blindly follow.
I know I'm like chasing my own tail with it, and I know it's not good signal, but I'm making the excuse for Sky Moore, and I think I'm taking him at pick 110. But
I'm taking him.
Like you're out.
No, I'm taking him, but you're not going to catch me publicly being like, Sky's a good pick. It'll be something I'll
I won't say
afterward.
That either.
Like I'll like when I like.
I love that you're honest about this. It's so funny.
Yeah, like I'll be like, I was actually taking Sky Moore the entire time. But I think the bust risk of him playing behind Richie James and Rashee Rice is so high that I can't possibly come on this program and tell other people to do what I'm doing. Like it's because Sky is basically like Tony, but without a breakout game. He didn't have the 18 target breakout game that he got ejected from. He's got nothing. He just has and
there's a lot of great games.
He tricked Kadarius Toney into running the wrong route so that he could get a touchdown. I mean, the guy's wily. You got to give him credit.
I mean, he was a pretty solid number 2 to D. Eskridge at Western Michigan at one point, so we have to give him credit for that.
Yeah,
he was a pretty good number 2. Yeah,
Madison Parkhill had a. If you want a legit bull case, someone went out on a limb this year and made the legit bull case for Sky Moore. The title of the article is "Reach for the Sky," so it's a legit bull case for him. You can check out his.
He is telling you at the same time that it's a reach when you're taking him, but at least he admits that in the.
We're saying reach for the sky.
I've been kind of the same as you, Davis, this year, where like I turned myself into such a total idiot, like bag pumping Sky last year, that I don't think that I have to. I think that I have to continue. Like my punishment for my sins of 2022
is to keep drafting.
That I have to keep taking them.
Yeah,
and B, that I have to do it in silence.
Like I have not total silence.
Yeah,
like
I'm
not
in total silence.
But I can't recommend it to others. Like I have to be there, and I have to like wear the chain of my sins. I was once at 22% Sky Moore. As his ADP has risen, I've taken that as a sign that potentially I don't need to continue to make him one of my most drafted wide receivers. So I'm now down to an entirely responsible 17% Sky Moore. But
I've got 11%.
I'm overweight.
Yeah, I'm at 11.6.
So I'm 9% or up on all the top 4 Chiefs wide receivers. I'm overweight on Sky by the most, but I'm also overweight on Rice, and I'm overweight on Tony, and I'm overweight on MVS. I just think that the likelihood that Chiefs wide receiver doesn't produce a winner for 2 consecutive years, just that feels really unlikely to me. Like I think that's just rolling ones twice. So I just want to once again Martingale Chiefs wide receiver as a general bet at way cheaper prices than they were last year. Like
I'm playing it through Moore and Rice primarily.
I'm playing through Morton Rice and a little bit of MVS as well.
I mean, I think MVS is just like total pennies on the street. Like MVS is going to run 80% of the route.
So that's
probably not run as cold as last year.
In Madison's piece, he mentioned that, Rice is kind of seen as like a potential competition for more, but that he might not be a slot guy so much as someone who could play on the outside. And MVS and Tony also, I think, will mix into the slot, but also play a fair amount on the outside. MVS was also like not always an 80% route guy last year. Like he was sometimes rotated out. I'm worried a little bit about how much playing time we actually even see from MVS. He was in open score last year. He was tied for last among all wide receivers with Corey Davis. So, like, I think he might be like kind of sneaky done.
I mean, I don't think that they care. Is my take. Like, for as long as the Chiefs have had Andy
just doesn't
Reid,
matter.
There has been a receiver that has played this position, and it's been Chris Conley, it's been Demarcus Robinson, it's been Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and like the objective is not to earn targets. The objective is not to get open. The objective is to block dudes in the run game and run downfield and be large. And I just think like those are like wily veteran responsibilities. So I just don't think that Rashee Rice is going to do that. I think that's MVS. And then when MVS needs a Gatorade, it's Justin Watson. And I think that if MVS ever got hurt, there'll be people that will be playing Sky Moore and Rashee Rice in DFS next week, and they will be disappointed when Justin Watson runs 82% of the routes. Like I just think that those two are like occupying.
This is the point of the show where the chat
other people are going for the other spots.
The chat is I'm not even looking, but I know they're typing about Justin Ross right now.
Ross's music is playing right now.
And I want to remind all of them not to do that.
I'm not going to say you should draft Justin Ross, but I do think the fact that he has a legitimate chance to make the roster. Do you not think he has any chance of making the roster? Because I think he does.
He could totally make.
What percentage would you say that he makes? What percentage would you give Justin Ross to being active in week 1?
He'd have to beat out Justin.
10%.
He'd have to beat out Justin Watson, which feels unlikely. Because the other thing
beat
is
out John Ross.
No one wants to say it, but the week 1 wide receiver targets leader for the Kansas City Chiefs, his name is Richie James.
Is Richie James a roster lock?
Yes,
I think
because he's the returner.
Is he for sure? They have a few returner options in camp, don't they? I mean,
I don't know if they'll want Isaiah Pacheco to be the kick returner if they're actually counting on him to be the primary running back. But Jacob, do you remember your Indianapolis Colts beat the Chiefs last year
remember that game
because of how bad their special
about the
teams
Colts
are?
Season for a moment there.
Yeah, they cannot go into another season like this with the worst return game in the NFL. Right? Richie James is good at it. He will be a core 4 special teamer. He will make the team because of that.
I think if you're delving into horrible Chiefs wide receiver picks, Justin Watson doubled up Richie James in terms of guarantees. You got a 2-year deal with the Chiefs this offseason. I mean, it's so gross, but couldn't Justin Watson just take MVS's role, and just do?
Yeah,
that's not what I'm saying.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not touting him, but if I'm taking a last round guy on the Chiefs, I think I'm taking Justin Watson over Ross or James.
Right. My point on the MVS stuff is sure, if you want to make a Justin Watson case, you can make a Justin Watson case. My main take on the Chiefs wide receivers is there's 3 spots and one of them is not available to the fun players. One of them is MVS's, and if it's not MVS's, it's Watson's. And then the other 3 young guys are competing for 2 other spots. Is my take. It's Sky Moore versus Rice for the Juju, Sammy Watkins intermediate kind of guy, and then Tony starts in the Hardman role. And then if Tony's legitimately good, then he's the guy in the 2 wide receiver sets with MVS, and it's the slot guy that comes off the field. And if he's not that good, then it's the Sky Rice guy who stays on the field, and Tony just does the Hardman-y stuff. That's my read of it. But I think that Sky is the one that has some multiple outs because I think he can win that spot off the jump and run somewhere between 60% of the routes to 80% of the routes. Or when Kadarius Toney gets hurt or threatens someone online and gets suspended by the team, or decides to dedicate himself to making music, or for any number of reasons is no longer available, then I think Sky becomes the logical choice to do the run around laterally and get tap passes role, which is a pretty legitimate role in the Chiefs offense.
Yeah. I will say if you're fading Toney right now, you have like a once in a lifetime chance to actually impact his ADP. If you just like tweet at him and talk shit to him, he'll probably DM you with some slurs and insults and might actually lead to him getting suspended. So I'm not advising that anyone creates burners and do this, but I'm saying
maybe repeat that because it seems like you are.
No, I'm specifically saying do not do that. But it's an interesting way to play the Toney market. But yeah, I don't know. Rashee Rice, like I want to talk about him for a second. Like if I just told you the Chiefs are drafting a wide receiver in the second round, I told you this like before the draft. I'm just saying the Chiefs are drafting a wide receiver in the second round. They're not bringing in any major free agent additions. Hopkins, anybody else is completely off the table. Like where should he go in ADP? Like, what would you guys say to that? You didn't know it's Rice. Just any wide receiver in the second round.
Yeah, he would be where he would go where Jordan Addison is going. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is like we're discounting Rice so much because yeah, exactly. Because he's a bad prospect.
I think he's my most drafted wide receiver. Yeah, confirmed. 22%.
I think we're going too far with it. Like it's a second round wide receiver on the Chiefs in like this completely wide open wide receiver room. I get it can fail, but like pick 150. I don't know. It's just such little opportunity cost. Like,
I mean, you're right, and I know that you're right because I'm sure care more about like dynasty level prospecting and analytical prospecting than 95% of people in draft rooms. And I'm overweight Rashee Rice. So if I'm overweight Rashee Rice, like you're right that he's probably being under drafted.
Yeah, I should probably even be taking more of them because I'm basically even with the field at this point. So I should be steadily overweight, I would say. And one thing,
am I the only one here that's overweight Toney, by the way, or is at least Dave?
Oh, I'm very underweight Toney.
I bet I'm overweight, but I bet my correlation with him to Mahomes. Yeah, I am overweight, but Mahomes is my third most drafted quarterback, so it's literally probably a 1-to-1.
I would never take Toney on a non-Mahomes Burrow team. But correct. On Mahomes Burrow teams, he is always there, and
yes,
he gets drafted by me.
Let's move on here.
Well, can I just make a point on Rice real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to – I mentioned this with Zay Flowers and stuff when he was coming out. And so this isn't a perfect point because I'm going to – some of it's draft position. But like Kendall Wright was, kind of in all of our minds like a total bust. But like even Kendall Wright had 2 seasons of 10-plus half-point PPR points per game in his second and third year. As a rookie, he had over 100 targets. So like guys who are like the dynasty stuff, like from the prospect evaluation point, dynasty, it's obviously more important because we're saying how good are these guys going to be over the course of many seasons. And in that sample, how good they are is going to have more of an opportunity to shine through. But in a wide open Chiefs depth chart, even if Rice ultimately is seen as a bust, he could still have a good rookie year. So I probably like need to keep reminding myself to like, no, just take Rice. I know it doesn't feel good, but this price is providing you.
Shouldn't it feel good though? Like what's the difference between Rashee Rice and McCole Hardman as a prospect?
I mean, Rice is probably a better prospect than Hardman.
As a prospect.
Yeah.
Hardman had,
and then he sucked in the NFL.
Yeah, but he had 6 touchdowns and 600 yards as a rookie. You'd take that where Rice is going right now.
Right. Yeah. That's a better.
That's the point Pat's making, right? That like he doesn't at this price. You're not even banking on him having a great rookie year. Like you just need a couple weeks.
You're not even banking on him being good. You're just banking on him being in a good situation, which he definitely is.
Yeah, like I can definitely see the case for Rice. Like I was doing a dynasty pod. We're talking about the Chiefs wide receivers just the other day, and like it is notable how differently the market has treated Rice and even Hardman. Because like Sky, I get
it's because we've been burnt every year for the last 5 years trying to pin the tail on the non-Tyreek wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sky's a different case, and that like people like and again, like, I am people, but like we were very excited about Sky Moore regardless of where he went, and then the Chiefs' excitement exacerbated that. But like if Sky Moore was drafted by like the Colts, like he would have still had fans. Whereas like Hardman was entirely a function of drafted by the Chiefs. Like it was,
we would have gone nuts if he was on the Packers.
Would be drafted before.
Yeah. He probably would have had a better year. He probably would have had a better year on the Packers, honestly. What was one of you two told me this stat? It was like of Chiefs wide receivers, there were only 2 instances of 20+ half-point PPR games, and one was Hardman, one was Juju.
Yeah, that was me. I think that was last week, and they were both in the same week last year. Hardman and Juju went over 20.
So goddamn funny.
That is
so funny.
Every other week, you did not get a Chiefs wide receiver over 20 points the whole season until I think MVS maybe did it. MVS did it against the Bengals maybe as well, but in the playoffs. Yeah, in the playoffs. But yeah, the Chiefs wide receivers were just chasing your own tail last year. Any other points on the risers here before we talk some fallers? Anyone want to call someone out? Okay.
Well, Nico Collins just continues to rise and just continues to be a great pick, and he hasn't really been off, in my opinion.
I haven't really been taking him recently. I took a lot early. I'm still at 9%, but I've kind of been out with this recent rise. Like
I get it. I still think Nico Collins should be going like ahead of Cortland Sutton and Michael Thomas. So I will continue to draft him until that is the case.
Do you really think he has that kind of stealing? I mean, he's got a rookie quarterback, and they're going to be a run-first offense. Like I loved him when he was back in the.
Going to be a run-first offense. Like
I think we can feel pretty confident. They're coming out. This is a Shanahan style coaching tree here
from a former PFF analyst.
Yeah, but I think efficient offense. But I don't think they're going to make Stroud carry it for him as a rookie.
I mean, I think they could be low pass rate over expectation, but not like
that's what I mean.
Titans Atlanta low. Like I think they could be
I agree.
A little bit low, and then they could also lose 12 games. And I think on net you could wind up with them being like pretty neutral in terms of raw pass rate. And you also have CJ Stroud, who's probably not going to scramble much. You have the Texans. Like this system has always been really low sacks per drop back, and I think it's pretty likely that they convert a lot of dropbacks into pass attempts. And so if you just look at raw pass attempt rate, like I think even with a low pass it over expectation, factoring in game script, factoring in conversion of dropbacks to pass attempts, I still think they could easily wind up in the top half. And Collins last year like earned volume at a really high, not a really high rate, but a really high rate for where he's going. Like he ran a ton of routes and projects to run a ton of reps this year. He's the only X wide receiver they have. And he was up over 20% targets per route run with Brandon Cooks. I just think I don't know. I think he projects like quite reasonably. Like I even did the projections on him, and like I have him for 114 targets this year, which is I get as bullish. I actually did knock him. Like I originally had him a little bit higher, and I was like, okay, I'm too much in the bag for Nico. I'm going to nerf him. But I think he comes out really strongly. I think the whole Texans offense is underdrafted, I guess. But Nico still is my most drafted wide receiver. It used to be like 80% when he was going like 150. So I have cool.
Yeah, but I took a ton of him when he was going around 150. He just felt like a cheat code at one point. But now that he's moved up, I'm just not taking wide receiver in that range a ton. And he doesn't feel like worth making an exception for to me. Just I guess I'm a little bit more skeptical that he's going to really earn volume at a like impressive rate. I think he's not nothing, but also like is he really something, And when he was priced before like he was nothing, and like or that we weren't even sure how many routes he's going to run. It's like he's going to run a lot of routes and he's not nothing. So I'm going to draft him a bunch. But now I think you kind of are betting on his talent a little bit, and I'm not out on it, but it's just. I don't know. I'm kind of going outside of my typical structure to do it, and I just haven't really done it a lot. Part of it is informed by the fact that I have this big overweight position at a better price as well.
I mean, do you think he's a worse player than Cortland Sutton? Like, I think he's a better football player than Cortland Sutton, and he's the number one on this team.
That feels like a little bit of a reach to me, just given how good Sutton was in his breakout season. Nico's never flashed like that.
Sure,
at this point in their careers, though, I don't know.
Like, Sure, he's not as good as 2019 Cortland Sutton, but
I've also sort of defended Sutton a little bit. Last week I was talking about, he finished 12th in open score last year, right behind Jerry Jeudy. I think the narrative that he's kind of like really, really lost a step might be overblown. He could be kind of interesting in this Michael Thomas-y X role. I'm not hammering Cortland Sutton, but it's easier for me to see Cortland Sutton kind of truly like earning a bunch of targets in like a wide receiver depth chart that I think is maybe more, I do think is more wide open than the market. I'm not as hyped on Jerry Jeudy. So
but it's wide open as Houston?
Not as wide open as Houston, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I think Sutton, in terms of a talent bet, I feel better about. I mean, Collins finished wide receiver 55 in open score. He's more of a downfield guy. He's more of a splash play guy, I think, than Sutton is at this point. But
if he's the leading target earner on a team that plays a little bit more open than you think, Stroud's a little bit better than you think. Like, he's a guy in that range who can be like a target dominator on his team.
I'm going to defend the talent too. Like Cortland Sutton, we don't have his 2022 data. I know from reception perception yet, but going back to 2021, 21st percentile versus man, 33rd percentile versus press. Nico Collins, 64th percentile versus man and 74th versus press, while playing as an X wide receiver. Like, those are legitimately strong rates. You look at last year, had 22.4% targets per route run, 1.68 yards per route run, 30.9% air yard share. Like that, like 22-31 range is like pretty in line with like a Mike Williams, for instance. It's not that far off of like a Michael Pittman. Like, it's frankly not that far off like a T. Higgins. Now, obviously, you bring in with Higgins, you're like, what if Jamar Chase wasn't there? Whereas Collins running as Brandon Cooks. Right. But like, I really don't think that he's actually that much beneath this group. Like, I don't think he's actually that far below like Mike Williams as a talent. And 1.68 yards per route run in the context of a Davis Mills offense is like good. Like, I just think he's like a legitimately good receiver with nobody around him. And I see him as like both sides of the sleeper wide receiver bet that we usually make. Usually we're either all in on big guy runs routes, wide open depth chart, or we're all in on, fancy per route stats. I think Nico is both of those guys. I don't know. I think he has risen, but I think he was so mispriced before. I'm still really, really in on this current price.
Yeah, that's fair. The last thing I'll add on Nico is I think for a while he was priced for me after a big teardrop at running back. Like after Elijah Mitchell goes, I think there's actually a pretty steep drop off to Jamal, McKinnon, Jalen Warren. I do like Kendre, but Kendre's a bit later. You can get him later. So for me, it was like once Herbert, Elijah Mitchell, A-Chain, Damian Harris, once that group is gone, I felt pretty comfortable clicking Nico and not feeling like I was sacrificing like a really good running back pick there. Now he is priced like, I think it's going to get tougher when he's priced like closer to Rashad Penny, Khalil Herbert, etc. But I see Jacob's argument. I think I'll still mix him in
I
there.
moved him up a little bit.
I get the opportunity cost. My position on Nico is that he is a wide receiver that should be in the wide receiver window, and he's just being drafted outside of it. So I'm willing to take him instead of those running backs because I just think he's fundamentally misvalued as a talent. Like I tweeted the day BBM opened, I think. I was like, I would draft Nico Collins in the 8th round if I had to, and I stand by it. I think he should be an 8th round pick.
Cool. Moving on to the fallers. Berkshire, we already touched on. He's one of the big fallers. Isaiah Pacheco comes out as the biggest faller here. He is down.
That feels like structural to me. There hasn't been like a blurb or anything, and McKinnon has not been rising. Like it just feels like people.
I think
he's going to miss the first half of training camp.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to. It might be because there's 2 puppies running. That's like probably nuking some of the running back ADP in this range.
And Poms and Pomeranians
and Poms. Yeah. But you are going to see him drop. Maybe not from this, but I don't. It hasn't felt to me like he's going to miss the beginning of training camp stuff's been priced in. There's also this UDFA running back who like made waves in minicamp.
Oh yeah, buddy. If you don't have a little bit of round 18, round 20 generic Prince, you need to live a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think like that's not going to help, And Sam, you were tweeting about, how Pacheco was like kind of overblown in terms of taking over the backfield in terms of the snap share and stuff. So it does feel like the market's just going to start to kind of drumbeat. Maybe Pacheco's overvalued here. And if he's not on the training camp field to defend himself a little bit, then I could see him slipping. I'm still overweight him, but it's made me nervous about that.
So to be clear on my tweet, I actually do like Pacheco. I'd have to check where I am, but I kind of want to be at market with him. My tweet was more
I'm actually right at market,
pro McKinnon, than anti Pacheco, because I don't know the Pacheco. So on the playoff stuff, there is a narrative that Pacheco overtook McKinnon in the playoffs. It's not really true, but it's kind of true. McKinnon actually outsnapped Pacheco in 2 of those 3 playoff games. Pacheco did convert his snaps to touches at a much higher rate than McKinnon did. So I get where the narrative is coming from. He was used a little bit in the passing game, got a lot more carries than McKinnon. But, man, I'm still skeptical that they just don't want to do Jerick McKinnon stuff with Jerick McKinnon for the 3rd year in a row. Like, I think his role is pretty solid and locked in. And the
thing is, eventually Jerick McKinnon is going to be able to stop doing Jerick McKinnon things, and we don't know when that cliff is going to come. But if that cliff comes this year, what do they do? What's their plan?
How related are Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco to each other? I don't think very.
Yeah, but those roles can exist in isolation. The question mark would be is how much is Clyde going to play, and is Clyde going to play at all?
Like, I think that's why Jerick hasn't risen, because I think if Pacheco, I think anything that comes out of Pacheco goes to Clyde or to unsigned running back.
I just think,
I think that if Jerick fails, that also either goes to Clyde or unsigned running back. But like, I don't think that Pacheco is going to do the McKinnon stuff. I don't think McKinnon is going to do the Pacheco stuff.
One reason I'm kind of into McKinnon or into Pacheco is that I think he can do more of the McKinnon stuff than he did last year because he's a second-year player, and he's not a total zero as a receiver.
Yeah.
It's
they are kind of distinct.
At all? How did he grade that?
That's the thing you'd have to. I think, one of the reasons that we sometimes see a pretty big jump in receiving involvement from second-year backs is I think they kind of either get the pass protecting together or they don't. And he was not a good pass protector last year. So that's your thing with Pacheco. Is a second-year player? Does he have a mastery of the playbook and get he's got plenty of time to study right now, right? He's not going to be able to practice. So, come on.
For what it's worth, the only running back I've been drafting on the Chiefs above market is Clyde, which is also feels gross to advertise in public, but
hey, if you martingale, the only way to not win a martingale is to run out of funds, right? so actually, you just got to keep betting, or then you go to zero.
Are you gonna do like the pickaxe meme, but for Clyde?
Oh, I should. That's a good tweet. I'm gonna file that one away.
It would be amazing if Clyde had like a 5-year NFL career in which he lost everyone money in every single year.
He never got back. What if Windhorse pointing meme? What if Clyde, has just been training with McKinnon and learning how to play like him, and Clyde actually is just because people forget McKinnon has had this crazy career where he's been like a backup to fucking Adrian Peterson. Then he was he signed a big contract with the 49ers, then suffered a horrible injury in the preseason. Like he thought his career was over, came back and played like he was a college quarterback. What a bizarre career Jerick McKinnon has had with a Super Bowl ring to show for it. I'm happy for him. Although I would have won a gigantic 115-1 same game parlay had he not kneeled at the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl. So
I'm happy for him, no break. But if he just would have,
but if he just would have slipped into the end zone, I would have been happier for him for sure.
I will start taking Pacheco. By the way, the 0% is about to change now that we're.
Well, I don't know. At this point, I might see.
At this point, your portfolio might be better off taking Prince. Honestly.
Yeah. Because I think he's going to
slide. Have the same exposure to both, so
he's going to slide. He's going to slide more once he's not on the field, right?
Well, I guess my only take is he's getting to the point where he's now falling. Like I was never willing to take Pacheco over within the wide receiver window, but now he's kind of close to being outside of it. So if we're getting Pacheco in the Charbonnet Dillon zone, then give me Pacheco. At that point, close my eyes.
That's where I've been able to get him.
I'm back to the Chiefs.
I'm even with the field, but I'm pretty sure it's at a very good price because he's one of those guys there's certain players who are very tight in their ADP ranges and certain players who will have big slides. And he's one of the guys where I'm like, oh man, Pacheco's here. 10 picks after ADP or something. Whereas like Rashad White, they go pretty close to each other, but I feel like White doesn't tend to slide like that. So
do you take Pacheco or Connor?
I would take Pacheco.
Okay. So I've been sexlessly selecting James Conner.
I take Pacheco just because can you imagine the feeling I would have if a Chiefs running back duplicated that Kareem Hunt run from the first 11 games before he kicked that woman in the hallway? And I didn't. Like, I've drafted every other Chiefs running back ahead of market, every last one of them. And I missed out on the guy who crushes it. Like, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. And sometimes that's pretty important.
I guess part of the Pacheco thing, too, for me is I just wasn't taking him initially. And then he started falling. And my attitude has just been like, let's just see how much he keeps falling. Like, I don't know. Like, I'd like to mix him in at some point. But he hasn't ever stabilized. So I just haven't felt the need to, like, get my exposure in. Like, I just kind of want to see where the bottom is, I guess. And if he's not out for training camp, then you're right that he probably goes down even more, right?
But Pacheco does offer them something that, I mean, unless this guy Deneric Prince is real, but the odds that like they hit on, a 7th rounder and then a UDFA like in a huge way in back-to-back years are pretty low. Obviously, that's really not how odds work. But the odds that Prince is anything as a UDFA are low. So I don't know, but unless he is something, then Pacheco is the only one who really offers them early down, the ability to just like hit the right hole.
Unless they sign Leonard Fournette.
Well, sure, but he was good last year. He had a 43% success rate per NFL Next Gen, which is good. He had 173 rush yards over expected, which is very good. Like, he was a good rusher. You have the potential that he mixes in a little bit more as a receiver. And I think a pretty significant lack of competition is a traditional classic running back. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, he stinks. We know that. This year, he's not even trying to pretend he weighed 110 pounds last year anymore. Like, he's given up. He's admitting he's bad. McKinnon is not an early down guy.
Yeah,
it's true.
Okay, you guys are talking me into it a little bit, but I'm also not upset about the fade to this point because I feel like I avoided some negatives.
I mean, how hard are you going to be?
I'm going to start filling it up now.
Well, how hard are you going to be pumping former Chief Juju Smith-Schuster now that DeAndre Hopkins is not signing with the Titans?
It deeply pains me that I will have to draft him, but I'm going to draft him a little bit.
I still don't think I'm clicking. I'd rather get my Patriots exposure via taking Mike Gesicki in round 17 and Mac Jones in round 18. That to me is the perfect.
Why Gesicki? I thought you were on Hunter Henry.
It's the same thing. Who cares? Like,
either one.
Could Bill Belichick?
Did you not watch the most recent episode of Ship Chasing, Davis? There's
I don't think it's the same thing. I've gone nuts trying to prove it's not the same thing. I literally started looking at specific plays that PFF charted.
You're a Henry guy.
I'm a Henry guy. I also am not like smashing Henry, but I just think I literally think like the whole like slot receiver thing, they're not playing in 12 personnel as their base formation in New England because no one does that. Like the Chiefs were at something in the 30s last year as 12 is there. They were the highest in the league, I think, in 12. They're still only about the 30% range. And then you have the fact that they have Juju as their most likely, probably their top target guy, unless I don't know. He's so bad, so who knows? But
I mean, he literally is still dealing with a knee injury from October of 2022. So
yeah, but he's playing traditional slot for them. Like, there's no way you have Juju out there. It's Juju, Devontae Parker, and Tyquan Thornton as your base set, right? And then that leaves you one position open for a tight end, not two.
Yeah. Must Tyquan Thornton be in their base stat? Like, he was a horrible prospect with a horrible rookie year. Like, why?
He certainly provides you some speed.
Anything?
I mean,
right, but can he provide you speed as like a 40% route rate rotational player?
So but is Juju going to play on the outside for? I mean, Juju
played on the outside in two wide receiver sets with Kansas City
with KC, and he's been.
Well, I'm saying like I think it's possible that like Thornton and Bourne rotate in equally.
Yeah, Bourne. I mean, he hates Bourne's guts. He's been in the doghouse for like 2 years.
He's still in the roster. He still has the spike weeks.
Listen, I mean, if Bourne was out
efficient.
there,
he's their most efficient receiver.
Yeah,
he actually.
But isn't Bourne more of a slot too?
he's like I think kind of like a gadgety player more than anything. Like I think he's more like kind of slot, but I think he's a guy you move around and put in motion. Like to me, they just have kind of guys. Like I guess Parker's going to play the X and be bad at it, and Juju's going to play one of the other positions and be bad at it, and then Bourne might play a little, and Thornton will be bad at something for a certain amount of plays. And
you got to open your third eye to Devontae Parker being the best way to play this by far.
But he's not good. Like I get that he's Juju and Parker are like the same thing. It's like, okay, they're probably going to score more points than where they're being drafted, and that's fine. But I don't know. Am I ever going to be excited? Like I'm just picturing. I'm trying to fast forward to the future. I'm picturing myself in week 17, and I'm opening up, and I'm like, oh man, I advanced the Best Ball Mania team to the finals, and then I see a Patriots wide receiver on it. Don't I just feel like I have 17 players now?
Pat won.
Pat literally just won
took
last
down
year.
the tournament
with 2 of them.
All I'm saying is, you look at
they both hit my lineup.
Yeah, they both hit your lineup. I mean, Devontae Parker played like I think 10 games last year and had like a 20-point week and a 22-point week in half PPR. Like, and that was on like this Patriots offense that everyone like universally calls this like absolute clown show offense, like absolute disaster. And Devontae Parker had 2 big spike weeks and like 10 games played. So they just paid him money to play the same role. Like I get that you're not guaranteed to get those. Like obviously I don't think that's how it works, but in the 18th round, you can't find many guys who are like locked into 2 wide receiver sets. Like Devontae
you also
Parker
aren't going to find Parker in the 18th round for very much longer.
Yeah, he's like a 16th round pick now.
He's gonna move on up. He'll be in the Van Jefferson.
Is he though? Isn't he still like he's like 195 right now?
But Hopkins' risk is over now, right? Like
Hopkins,
Juju,
he's gonna
probably both moving up because it's like
I'm at 179 now, which is
you're like I'm not even gonna contest you about Parker. Like you are correct. I just don't like it.
That's fair.
Like I understand you're right.
I think the tight ends.
That you're right. It annoys me.
The tight ends are the way to play it, just because I feel that tight ends will be so involved.
I like the tight ends, just because Gesicki. I agree with Pat that Gesicki's base roll is pretty bad, and I prefer Hunter.
What's his route rate? What's Gesicki's route rate?
Yeah, no, it's
route rate.
It's like Dalton Kincaid who goes 50 picks early.
I have Gesicki projected at a 45% route rate, and Hunter Henry.
That is horrendous.
Yeah, but
45% is a fucking disaster.
Well, I'm not making the case for him.
Yeah.
I'm making
how many tight ends have?
No, I know, but I'm saying I'm using your numbers to make my point, which is that Gesicki's not a great pick.
But Pat, how many tight ends have outs to like playing slot wide receiver and outside wide receiver if the wide receivers in the depth chart get injured? Like not that many, and Gesicki is one of them.
Okay, fine. Although here's one issue with Gesicki, and maybe you don't care about this, but he's not good. And he's never been good.
No, I just touted Devontae Parker. I clearly don't care about that.
So I mean, the argument for and against every Patriots wide receiver and tight end is that they're all bad. Like that, the argument for any one of them is that the rest of them suck, but the argument against that one is that they suck.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's had his career yards per hour is 1.26. He's never really earned targets. It's all just been like, hey, he does this. He plays out wide a little bit. He plays in the slot a lot. Like. He's not used like a traditional tight end. It's true, but like, it's not like they have a glaring need for outside wide receiver snaps. In fact, as I just mentioned, Kendrick Bourne is kind of floating around as maybe their most talented wide receiver, and he's like wide receiver 4 on the depth chart. So I don't know. I don't see the path to Gesicki running a ton of routes being all that clean. And his base rate in terms of how many routes we expect him to run is he's probably like a halftime player. Why am I drafting like Noah Fant, instead of Mike Gesicki? If I'm into 55% route rates, why wouldn't I draft Noah Fant?
I agree. It's weird that Gesicki gets drafted in every draft at like pick 190. I'm just saying, like, as you're like sometimes he's hanging around the last round, and I'm like, whatever, sure. But I'm with you, Pat.
I always just take Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I take Hunter Henry because I'm like that's
Hunter
a 65% route rate. I'm getting a 10%
jump. Cats that I like want to click. This whole thing just bums me out. I just wanted Hopkins to go here because Hopkins could have just walked in and taken a 29% target share without any issue, and that would have been a much more fun scenario without hurting anyone's fun.
I've heard, this isn't direct, but I've heard through the grapevine that Crack Rock said the Patriots are legitimately interested in Dalvin Cook. So take it for what it's worth. Man is breaking news left and right. He also said the Jets are legitimately interested as well. So
I think that the Patriots taking Cook is probably best case scenario for me personally, because I have like 1% Dalvin Cook, so I don't want him to go to Miami because then I'd have to eat some negative CLV on Cook. And while I am overmarket on Ramondre, I am much less overmarket on Ramondre than I am Breece Hall and Dolphins running backs. So of the three, I'll take this one.
Yeah, I would take the Patriots one too. Just keep Breece alive. That's all I care about.
Yeah. I mean, he's not dead if Dalvin goes there.
He's not dead, but it certainly
hurts.
People
forget about Dalvin Cook is that he sucks.
He'll probably go after Mixon if Dalvin goes there. You know,
I almost want that so bad that I would sacrifice my existing 20% for my future 60%.
Future 60% would be a little light, Jacob. Come on, get on board.
I mean, how much? If Dalvin Cook goes to the Jets and Breece Hall goes at like late 4th or in the 5th, what would your exposure be on your remaining drafts? Because I can't imagine mine.
I would say probably, like, honestly, it might be like 66%. I might do like a 2/3.
If he signs where?
The Jets.
If
like if
Cook
we
signs with
get
the
round
Jets.
5 Breece Hall because Cook is a Jet.
Yeah.
Would you
Oh,
ever leave a round 5
I don't
without
like
him?
I don't like Breece Hall, but if Breece drops because some dusty vet signs with them, I'm gonna be clicking that button so fast, so hard.
I would bet my entire season on him without any hesitation at that point.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So we're actually rooting for this at this point.
I think we are. Yeah, maybe.
I also want to dunk on people on Twitter, so like that makes me kind of want to root for it because I just
I mean,
feel like it
that's
would be
buddy.
like
That's
fun
why
for the
we.
negative
That's
engagement.
why we play the game. That's why we.
That's the only reason Twitter hasn't fully dissolved into nothing, is that we're all just still trying to get our dunks in.
Anyways, I unfortunately I gotta go, guys. So the people that wanted a 2.5 hour show, sadly aren't gonna get it. But this is good stuff. I actually have a hard out, so I don't know if I leave the broadcast, is that just gonna end things?
Let's get on.
We gotta pick our guy, right? Isn't that the thing?
Yeah, okay, Jacob, you get one. No one else gets one this week because I gotta leave.
Okay,
Jacob, who's your favorite value?
Really quick, it's on the theme of ACL running backs. I put out the tweet last week to try and do some insider trading. It still has not worked. I don't understand why every piece of news about Javonte Williams has been positive, and yet his ADP is still 2 rounds lower than when the big board opened. So I think as we continue to get positive news on Javonte Williams, which it seems all news is positive, once we see him at training camp, we get videos. I think that he's going to be a guy that rises in ADP. He also goes in a really bad range of the draft right now, especially if he gets like passed up by Kamara. That's a guy that I really want to take a lot of exposure to. I think he could easily end up in round 6, round 7 if we get all systems go on him for week 1.
Beautiful.
I like that. I've been clicking him more and more. So for all of us, you guys know where to find Davis and Pat.
Let me just say, this group tomorrow, live on YouTube.
Oh yeah, we'll be back.
We're gonna be drafting. I'm doing a 7-hour draft marathon tomorrow in honor of 7/18, which is when I drafted my winning best ball mania team, and also when King Cap drafted his regular season winning team. Crazily enough, so gonna be doing this group is gonna be one of those drafts. So check that out.
Love it. Looking forward to it.
We'll be taking Micah Thicky.
I will have